In the quiet suburbs of Oak Ridge, a tree-lined street of neat lawns and white picket fences stretched for blocks. Mailboxes stood in perfect alignment, and wind chimes softly rang in the evening breeze. Life here was orderly, peaceful, and safe, or at least, that's what the neighbors thought. That is, until Rex appeared in their lives. Rex was a massive German shepherd, muscles taut under a glossy black and tan coat. He wasn't just a dog. He was a legend, a terrifying presence that made even the bravest of Oak Ridge's residents tread carefully. The stories were almost mythical. There were accounts of delivery drivers sprinting away from his yard, of joggers narrowly escaping teeth and snarls, and of children squealing in panic when he lunged at the chain-link fence with a force that rattled the posts. Every incident reinforced the same grim conclusion. Rex was untouchable. Rex hadn't always been this way. Once, years ago, he had been a puppy full of energy and curiosity, eyes sparkling with mischief. But neglect and abuse had transformed him into the dog Oak Ridge whispered about in fear. His former owners had surrendered him after multiple biting incidents, each one more serious than the last. Veterinarians and trainers had tried, but Rex's mistrust ran too deep. He was a puzzle no one could solve, a creature defined by fear, aggression, and loneliness. Neighbors had long ago learned to give his property a wide berth. Sidewalks had unofficial Rex zones, where everyone instinctively crossed to the other side. Children running to school diverted their paths, and parents would grab their kids' hands tightly whenever they passed his house. Even the neighborhood dog walker known for handling the most stubborn terriers and retrievers avoided Rex entirely. To see him pacing the yard, ears pricked and teeth glinting in the sun, was enough to make anyone pause. There was something in his gaze, a fierce intelligence, yes, but also a shadow of sadness that sent shivers down the spine. One particularly hot afternoon, the summer sun beating down on asphalt and freshly mowed lawns, Rex's presence became the center of neighborhood chatter. A new delivery truck rolled slowly down the street, packages clanging in the back. Rex spotted it instantly. The driver froze, perhaps thinking he could pass unnoticed, but the dog had already locked eyes on him. With a guttural growl, deep and menacing, Rex sprinted to the edge of his yard. The chain-link fence shook violently as he leapt and barked, a living wall of aggression. The driver hastily backed away, tossing the packages onto the lawn of the nearest safe house, muttering curses under his breath. Rex stood proudly, chest heaving, a triumphant ruler of his domain. Across the street, neighbors watched from behind curtains, whispering among themselves. "He's insane," Mrs. Whitaker, a retired schoolteacher, murmured. "I've never seen anything like it." A group of children riding bikes swerved sharply to avoid the driveway, squealing in alarm. Every footstep in that neighborhood now carried an undertone of caution. Oak Ridge had accepted Rex's aggression as part of its suburban rhythm. He was untouchable, unapproachable, and feared by everyone except one person who had yet to arrive on this story's stage. Meanwhile, inside the house that overlooked Rex's territory, Emily adjusted to her new surroundings. The 7-year-old girl, her brown curls bouncing, peered curiously out the window of her family's newly purchased home. The Whitakers had warned her about Rex when they met at the neighborhood welcome party. "Stay away from that dog," they had said. "He's dangerous." But Emily wasn't like other children. Where they saw danger, she saw a story, a puzzle waiting to be understood. Her parents, cautious and slightly exasperated with their daughter's curiosity, reminded her multiple times. "Emily, don't go near his yard," her mother said. "We don't know what he might do." Her father nodded, adding, "He's not like the friendly dogs you've met before. Give him space." But Emily's mind had already drifted to Rex. There was something about the way he moved, the intensity in his eyes, that made her feel he wasn't just a bad dog. She sensed fear, yes, but also a longing of play for connection buried beneath the snarls. That evening, Emily's curiosity got the better of her. She tiptoed to the edge of the sidewalk, across from Rex's yard, clutching a small bag of dog treats she had hidden in her backpack. Her heart pounded, but not with fear, rather, with anticipation. She watched him from a distance, noting the way his tail twitched, how his ears flicked toward her every time she moved. He was pacing now, circling a worn patch of grass near the fence, muscles coiled, eyes sharp. Emily took a deep breath and placed one treat gently on the ground, a safe distance from the fence. Rex's head snapped toward it immediately. The growl that rumbled in his throat was intimidating, but he hesitated, sniffing the air. Emily spoke softly, her voice calm and soothing, a stark contrast to the chaos of the street. "It's okay, Rex," she said, kneeling to appear smaller and less threatening. "I just want to be your friend." Rex growled again, louder this time, the sound vibrating through the air. Yet something remarkable happened. He didn't lunge. He didn't snap. Instead, he circled the treat cautiously, sniffing it, evaluating, unsure. Emily's small, steady voice seemed to hold a power no adult had ever managed to wield. The neighborhood watched in hushed silence, windows open, curtains drawn aside. No one had seen this before. A child, unafraid, challenging the untouchable reputation of the infamous German Shepherd. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Oak Ridge, Emily stood slowly, taking a few steps back. "I'll come back tomorrow," she whispered, a promise rather than a threat. Rex's ears twitched, and for a fleeting second, his growl softened. He watched her leave, eyes never breaking contact. Something had shifted, subtle but undeniable. The untouchable German Shepherd, feared by all, had noticed the little girl and perhaps, for the first time in his life, felt the stirrings of trust. That night, Oak Ridge slept under a warm blanket of stars, unaware that the balance of fear and hope had begun to tilt. Everyone thought they knew Rex, the aggressive guardian of the street. But Emily, brave and empathetic, was about to rewrite the story. Little did anyone know, the legend of Rex was about to change forever, and a 7-year-old girl would become the key. The morning sun bathed Oak Ridge in a golden glow, illuminating the rows of houses and perfectly manicured lawns. Emily sat at the kitchen table, a slice of toast half eaten, eyes fixed on the window across the street. She couldn't stop thinking about Rex. The stories the neighbors had told her, ferocious, untouchable, uncontrollable only, made her curiosity grow. Most children would have been terrified, and many adults still were. But Emily was different. She saw Rex not just as a dangerous dog, but as a creature in need, a soul trapped behind fear and aggression. Her mother noticed her gaze and gently cautioned, "Emily, remember what we talked about. Don't get too close to Rex. He's not safe." Emily nodded obediently, but her mind was already racing with ideas. Every detail she remembered from yesterday, the way Rex's ears twitched, how his tail flicked at her voice, the way he circled the treat with hesitation, suggested he wasn't purely aggressive. He was wary. He was hurt. And for some reason, she felt he could be reached. By mid-morning, Emily had her backpack ready. Inside, she had carefully packed a small supply of dog treats, a notebook, and a pencil. She had decided that observation was the first step. Instead of rushing in, she would study Rex from a safe distance, learning his habits, his triggers, and, most importantly, his moods. Her young mind approached the problem with precision, as if she were an animal behaviorist conducting her first experiment. From her vantage point across the street, Emily noticed things that others had missed. Rex's paws were calloused from pacing. The grass in one corner of the yard was flattened from repeated rounds of circles. His growl was sharp, yes, but sometimes, when no one was near, it softened into a low whine. He wasn't just a dog who attacked out of malice. He was a dog who had been hurt, misunderstood, and left alone. Emily's father called from the porch. "Don't get any closer, Emily." She waved, signaling she understood, but remained determined. Her eyes followed Rex as he wandered to the far corner, his posture tense but cautious. Emily knelt behind the fence line, placing another treat on the ground. It was a simple piece of chicken, carefully wrapped in a small napkin. She spoke in her softest voice, almost a whisper. "I'm your friend, Rex. I won't hurt you." Hours seemed to pass in silence. Rex noticed the treat, but instead of grabbing it, he circled the area, glancing at Emily. Then he did something remarkable. He took a single cautious step closer, sniffing the air, then froze. Emily held her breath. She didn't move. She didn't smile or make sudden gestures. She simply waited, letting him make the next move. And for the first time, Rex hesitated before retreating. It wasn't trust yet, but it was curiosity. Emily returned home that evening, her notebook filled with observations. She had drawn small sketches of Rex's yard, noting areas of tension, escape routes, and spots where he felt most secure. She wrote down the times he barked, whined, and paced. To most, this would have seemed like an obsessive hobby, but to Emily, it was the first step in understanding him. She was forming a strategy, not to control Rex, but to connect with him. The next few days became a routine. After school, Emily would walk to the edge of Rex's yard, treats in hand, observing quietly. The neighborhood kids whispered, amazed that she dared to approach. Even the adults began to take notice, murmuring behind their curtains. "She's brave." Or crazy, someone muttered. But Emily didn't care about their judgment. She only cared about the small signs of recognition she saw in Rex's eyes, the brief moment he paused, the subtle wag of a tail, the hesitant sniffing at a treat. One afternoon, Rex made his first noticeable advance. He stepped to the edge of his yard, nose twitching, eyes fixed on the tiny hand that held a treat. Emily stayed kneeling, not moving a muscle. Her heart pounded, but she remained calm. Rex sniffed, then slowly nudged the treat with his nose, almost delicately, as if testing the waters. Emily smiled, a small, triumphant curve of her lips. "Good boy," she whispered. Her tone wasn't commanding, but reassuring. It was a sound he hadn't heard in years, approval without threat. Emily's parents watched from the porch that day, tension written across their faces. "Are you sure about this?" her mother asked, anxiety flickering in her voice. Her father nodded, unsure. "She's so small." He could snap in an instant. Emily merely waved again, confident. She had learned something important. Rex responded not to fear or force, but to patience, consistency, and kindness. Every cautious sniff, every tentative step forward was a victory earned, not demanded. By the end of the week, Rex had taken several small treats directly from Emily's hand. The progress was slow, fragile, and uncertain, but undeniable. Neighbors peeked out their windows in disbelief. Some even crossed the street to get a glimpse. Emily had done what no adult could. She had begun breaking through the wall Rex had built around himself. Yet she knew there was still a long way to go. Trust, once broken, could not be rushed. The breakthrough wasn't just about food or proximity. It was about communication. Emily spoke softly, using words that carried calm reassurance. She moved slowly, never turning her back, never making sudden gestures. She learned to read his body language, when his ears flattened, when his tail twitched, when he stiffened in fear. She became fluent in his subtle cues, and over time, Rex began to understand hers. A silent conversation began to unfold across the fence line, a dialogue of trust and empathy. One particularly quiet evening, as the sun dipped low, and the shadows of trees stretched across the pavement, Rex approached Emily more boldly than ever. He sniffed her shoes, then her hand, then paused, staring into her eyes. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Emily didn't flinch. She simply smiled, whispered, "It's okay," and offered her hand slowly. Rex lowered his head, still cautious, but willing to be near her. That night, Emily returned home, heart racing, notebook in hand. She recorded every detail, the exact time he approached, his body language, the order in which he sniffed her. She understood that every interaction, no matter how small, mattered. In her young mind, this was more than a dog. It was a life waiting to be healed, a bond waiting to be forged. And Emily, brave and patient, was the bridge. As Oakridge settled into the quiet hum of evening, Rex lay in his yard, eyes following the fading figure of Emily through the street. The neighborhood had seen something unprecedented. A little girl, fearless and determined, making the impossible possible. For the first time in years, Rex's gaze held a flicker of hope. He had begun to trust, even if only a little, and a story that had long been defined by fear was about to change. The untouchable German shepherd had met someone who refused to be afraid. And Emily, full of courage and compassion, was ready to take the next step. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of freshly mown grass and distant barbecue smoke. Emily's backpack felt heavier than usual, not because of the treats inside, but because of the anticipation that churned in her chest. Today, she decided, would be the day of the first real attempt, not just observing from a distance, not just offering food, but reaching out in a way no one in Oakridge had dared before. She approached the fence cautiously, a bag of treats in her hand. Rex lay in his usual spot, a patch of shade beneath the old oak tree, muscles coiled, eyes sharp and calculating. The air between them was thick with tension, as though the dog understood that this interaction would be different from all the others. Emily knelt down on the sidewalk, keeping her hands visible and her movements slow. Her heart pounded, but she stayed calm. "Hi, Rex," she whispered softly, extending a treat carefully toward him. Her voice had no command in it, only warmth, curiosity, and patience. Rex froze mid-step, ears pricked, nostrils flaring. His tail, once rigid with aggression, twitched slightly, betraying his curiosity. He growled, low and threatening, the sound vibrating through the air, but he didn't lunge. Emily stayed still, silent, letting him process her presence. She had learned from her observations that sudden movements or raised voices would undo weeks of cautious progress. For what felt like an eternity, Rex simply watched her. Then, almost imperceptibly, he inched closer to the treat, sniffing the air around it. His growl softened into a low rumble, still cautionary, but less threatening. Emily's pulse raced. This was it, the critical moment. She held her hand steady, maintaining eye contact without forcing it, radiating calm and reassurance. She had read that animals often respond to confidence and gentleness more than words, and Emily embodied both. Rex finally took a tentative step forward, nose twitching as he sniffed the treat. He hesitated, glancing up at Emily as if seeking confirmation that it was safe. Emily smiled gently, whispering, "It's okay, Rex. You're safe." Slowly, Rex nudged the treat with his nose and picked it up. The victory was small, yet monumental. Emily exhaled quietly, relief flooding her chest. She hadn't touched him yet, but the barrier had begun to crack. Encouraged, Emily extended her hand just slightly, fingers curled, allowing him to sniff her palm. Rex paused, ears tilted back, eyes sharp, muscles tense. The neighborhood seemed to hold its collective breath as he inched closer, nostrils brushing her skin. Emily remained still, her own heartbeat loud in her ears. This was the first time anyone had reached this far without triggering his aggression. Then, in a delicate, almost imperceptible gesture, Rex licked her hand. It was brief, cautious, but undeniable. Neighbors peeked through blinds, whispers of disbelief floating in the air. "She's touching him. She's actually touching him," one neighbor murmured. Emily didn't notice them. Her focus was entirely on Rex, on the fragile trust blossoming between them. Slowly, she pulled her hand back, careful not to startle him, and whispered, "Thank you, Rex." The dog stepped back, still tense, but his eyes lingered on her. He was curious, cautious, but something had shifted. Over the next hour, Emily remained kneeling, speaking softly, offering treats, and allowing Rex to approach on his terms. Each small gesture was a victory, each cautious sniff a step toward trust. Rex's growl faded into low whines as he circled the yard, keeping his distance but showing clear signs of engagement. Emily noted every movement in her notebook, cataloging his reactions and patterns. She realized that this dog responded not to dominance, not to fear, but to patience and empathy. When the sun began to dip low in the sky, Emily decided to end the session. She stood slowly, keeping her movements deliberate and non-threatening. "I'll come back tomorrow," she promised, her voice soft but confident. Rex watched her retreat, ears flicking, eyes sharp but calm. For the first time, he didn't arc or lunge. Emily's promise, unspoken in its weight, lingered in the air like a fragile truce. That evening, Emily returned home, exhausted but exhilarated. Her parents were waiting anxiously on the porch, worry etched across their faces. "Did he?" Her mother began, but Emily interrupted gently. "He took a treat, and he sniffed my hand." Her father's eyes widened. "He actually—" Emily nodded. "He's still cautious, but he's curious now." Both parents exhaled slowly, realizing the enormity of what their daughter had accomplished. She had done what no adult in the neighborhood had managed. She had connected with Rex. In her room that night, Emily opened her notebook and wrote in careful, precise letters. "Rex is curious. He is cautious. He needs patience. He can be trusted if approached gently." She drew small sketches of his yard, noting where he felt safe, where he paced, and where he displayed defensive behavior. Each page reflected the care and attention she poured into understanding him. She wasn't just recording a dog's behavior, she was charting the roadmap to trust. Meanwhile, across the street, Rex lay in his yard, watching the fading figure of Emily through the fence. His ears twitched, his head tilted, eyes following her every movement. Something had changed in him. The unapproachable, untouchable German shepherd, feared by everyone in Oak Ridge, had allowed a small human to approach. He had not bitten, not lunged, not barked aggressively. For the first time in years, he had engaged willingly, driven by curiosity rather than fear. That night, as the streetlights flickered on and the neighborhood settled into quiet, Rex lay in the shadows of the oak tree, alert but calm. He replayed the encounter in his mind, the soft voice, the small hand, the taste of the treat. Something inside him shifted. Trust, long buried beneath layers of aggression and fear, began to stir. He wasn't fully ready to embrace it yet, but the seed had been planted. Emily had broken through the first barrier. Oak Ridge had always feared Rex. He had been a symbol of danger, a living warning that not all dogs could be tamed. But Emily, small, brave, and determined, had begun to rewrite that narrative. For the first time, the neighborhood caught a glimpse of possibility. The untouchable could be touched. The aggressive could be understood. And the lonely could be befriended. As Emily lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, she whispered softly to herself, "Tomorrow, we'll go a little closer." She didn't know how far Rex would allow her to come, or what challenges awaited, but she felt ready. The first attempt had been made. The first barrier had been broken, and in the quiet suburb of Oakridge, a story that had long been defined by fear was beginning to change one small, courageous girl at a time. The next morning, Oakridge awoke to the soft hum of suburban life. Sprinklers hissed over freshly mown lawns, birds chirped in the oaks lining the street, and distant lawnmowers buzzed like sleepy bees. Emily was already up, backpack slung over her small shoulders, filled with carefully selected dog treats, her notebook, and a pencil. Today would not be like yesterday. Today, she would take the next step in building a connection with Rex, the German shepherd that the neighborhood feared above all else. As she approached the edge of his yard, Emily noticed that Rex was pacing more slowly. His muscles were taut, but less rigid, and his ears twitched at her arrival. He had remembered her. He had noticed her presence yesterday, and today he seemed curious, almost anticipatory. Emily knelt carefully on the sidewalk, just as she had the previous day. She spoke in her calm, soothing voice, offering a treat. "Good morning, Rex. It's me. I'm your friend." Rex froze momentarily, sniffing the air, then inched closer to the treat. The neighborhood children peered out from their porches, whispers floating in the summer air. "She's at it again," one girl muttered, her eyes wide with amazement. No adult dared intervene. They had learned that Emily's courage and patience were something extraordinary. Today, she was the observer, the teacher, and the diplomat all at once. Her small size, once seemingly a disadvantage, became her greatest asset. As the minutes stretched, Emily noticed subtle shifts in Rex's behavior. He wasn't pacing as aggressively. His growls were quieter, almost hesitant. He circled the yard less, instead approaching the treat with tentative steps. Emily jotted notes in her notebook, tracking his movements, his reactions to her voice, and the slightest flick of his tail. She was learning the language of his body, the unspoken cues that revealed whether he felt threatened, curious, or calm. By mid-morning, something remarkable happened. Rex allowed Emily to place the treat closer to her hand, and this time, he took it without hesitation. He sniffed her fingers afterward, a cautious investigation, then stepped back. Emily whispered, "Thank you, Rex," her voice a gentle reassurance. She didn't try to touch him yet. She knew trust couldn't be forced. She simply remained present, allowing him to understand that her presence was safe, consistent, and kind. Over the next several days, Emily established a routine. After school, she would kneel near the fence for half an hour, offering treats, soft words, and the steady patience that had begun to calm Rex. She learned that timing was critical. He responded better when she approached slowly, spoke softly, and maintained a consistent rhythm. She noted which parts of the yard made him anxious and which seemed to provide comfort. She even drew sketches of his favorite shaded spots and the edges of the fence where he felt secure. The neighborhood began to take notice. Neighbors peeked through curtains or slowed their walks, eyes wide with curiosity. No one could believe what they were witnessing. The infamous Rex, aggressive and feared for years, responding to a little girl's calm presence. Emily didn't seek attention, but her efforts were impossible to ignore. Word spread slowly Oakridge was witnessing a transformation that adults and children alike had long considered impossible. One afternoon, a sudden distraction tested Rex's progress. A squirrel darted across the yard, and the dog's instinctive growl erupted, a sharp and warning sound. Emily froze, but did not move, speaking softly. "It's okay, Rex. Nothing to worry about." She observed as he circled, tense yet restrained. Instead of lunging at the squirrel or reacting violently, he paused, glanced at Emily, and then retreated back to his shaded corner. It was a small victory, a demonstration that he was beginning to listen to her guidance rather than purely instinct. Emily took notes immediately, recording every reaction, every subtle sign of obedience or restraint. She realized that trust was not linear. There would be setbacks, moments of fear, but each small success mattered. Rex was learning that aggression was not the only response to the world, and Emily's patience provided the bridge to that understanding. Each day, she grew more confident in her ability to communicate with him, and Rex grew more comfortable in her presence. By the end of the week, Emily had achieved a milestone. Rex allowed her to sit quietly near the fence, within a few feet of him, without growling. His tail twitched occasionally, a subtle sign of engagement. Emily whispered words of encouragement, spoke gently, and kept her gaze calm and unthreatening. She knew she had to let him take the lead, to approach her on his terms. Every inch she closed was a triumph, earned through patience and respect rather than force. The breakthrough was not only physical, but emotional. Emily could sense a subtle change in Rex's demeanor. The tension in his shoulders had eased, the rigid line of his spine softened, and his eyes, once filled with suspicion, now carried a hint of curiosity and even trust. It was fleeting, delicate, and fragile, but it was there. Emily understood that this was the foundation of a deeper bond that could eventually overcome years of fear and neglect. Meanwhile, neighbors continued to observe, fascinated. A retired trainer from down the street shook his head in disbelief. "No child should be able to do that," he muttered, though there was a hint of admiration in his voice. Even the adults who had long feared Rex began to reconsider. Perhaps this dog wasn't purely aggressive. Perhaps he was misunderstood. And perhaps a little girl's empathy could achieve what adults, fear, and discipline had failed to do. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily finally decided to end the session. She stood slowly, not turning her back, and whispered, "Tomorrow, I'll come back." Rex watched her leave, ears pricked, tail flicking once. He had not lunged, had not barked aggressively, and for the first time in years, allowed himself to engage on a cautious, voluntary level. Emily's small presence had shifted something deep within him, the beginnings of trust. That night, Emily returned home, tired but exhilarated. Her parents asked about her day, worry etched on their faces. "Did he?" her father began, voice tinged with disbelief. Emily nodded, a bright smile spreading across her face. "He let me sit near him today. He didn't growl. He even sniffed my hand." Her mother's eyes widened, a mix of amazement and relief. For the first time, they could see the transformation unfolding before them, and it was their daughter's courage that had sparked it. Emily carefully recorded the day's events in her notebook. She noted Rex's behavior, his subtle movements, and the emotional cues she had learned to read. Every detail mattered. When he relaxed, when he froze, when he sniffed, and when he hesitated. She was not only learning about him, she was learning about empathy, patience, and communication. She realized that even the most aggressive beings could respond to kindness if approached correctly. Across the street, Rex lay in his yard, watching the fading figure of Emily. His ears twitched, his gaze following her every step. The transformation was slow, subtle, and fragile, but undeniable. He had allowed someone to come close, to offer treats, to communicate with patience and calm. A small seed of trust had been planted, and for the first time in years, the untouchable German shepherd was not completely untouchable. Emily climbed into bed that night, notebook in hand, jotting down reflections. "Rex is cautious, but curious," she wrote. "He responds to patience, not force. He is beginning to trust me." She smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility and hope. Tomorrow, she would return, inching closer, building the fragile bridge of trust that would eventually transform Rex, and perhaps even the entire neighborhood. In Oak Ridge, the street remained quiet, but something had shifted. Fear had begun to loosen its grip. Hope in the form of a small, courageous girl, had entered the yard of the untouchable German Shepherd. And for the first time, Rex looked at the world not solely through the lens of aggression and mistrust, but with the faint glimmer of curiosity and maybe, just maybe, a willingness to connect. The sun rose over Oak Ridge, spilling golden light across neat lawns and the familiar streets where life hummed quietly. Birds chirped in the oaks, sprinklers hissed across freshly cut grass, and distant neighbors opened their windows to the soft morning air. Emily, small and determined, stepped onto the sidewalk with her backpack slung over her shoulders, heart racing with anticipation. Today, she felt ready to take the next step with Rex, not just watching him, not just offering treats, but trying something more, a tentative physical connection. Rex was already awake, pacing slowly near the oak tree that provided shade in his yard. His gaze locked on Emily the moment she appeared, ears twitching and tail stiff, but not as rigid as it had been in the past. He recognized her presence, and though his instincts still carried wariness, curiosity glimmered faintly in his eyes. Emily knelt carefully on the edge of the sidewalk, her bag of treats resting beside her. "Good morning, Rex," she whispered, her voice soft, calm, and steady. She extended a treat toward him. He froze, growled softly, and circled once before taking it delicately. Emily smiled quietly. Each small victory mattered, each cautious step forward a sign of progress. But today, she was ready for more. She slowly extended her hand, palm up, fingers slightly curled, allowing him to sniff her touch. Rex hesitated, ears flattening slightly, muscles tense. The neighborhood, peeking from behind curtains and porches, held its collective breath. A moment stretched into silence. Rex inched closer, nose twitching as he approached her outstretched hand. Emily remained still, whispering softly, "It's okay, Rex. I won't hurt you." The growl that rumbled in his throat softened into a low rumble, almost questioning. Then, in a gesture both tentative and astonishing, Rex gently brushed his nose against her palm. Emily exhaled quietly, her heart leaping with excitement. She had touched him literally, physically connected with the dog that everyone had feared for years. For the first time, Rex allowed someone to bridge the gap between fear and trust. Emily's calm, unwavering presence reassured him that this wasn't a trap. Slowly, she traced her fingers along the side of his muzzle, careful to avoid sudden movements. Rex flinched initially, then relaxed slightly, leaning into her touch for a fraction of a second. It wasn't full trust yet, but it was progress, a milestone that no adult in Oak Ridge had ever achieved. Neighbors peeked through windows, whispering in disbelief. "She's actually touching him. And he's not biting," one exclaimed. A retired trainer, who had long given up on Rex, shook his head. "Unbelievable. That little girl has more patience and courage than any of us," he muttered, eyes wide. Emily didn't notice the attention. Her focus was entirely on Rex, reading every micro-movement, every twitch of his ears or flick of his tail. Over the next hour, Emily continued to sit quietly near Rex, speaking softly, offering treats, and allowing him to take the lead. She learned that proximity was more important than touch. Rex's comfort came from control. If he moved away, she remained still, letting him return on his own terms. Each small gesture, a sniff, a nuzzle, a gentle brush, was logged carefully in her notebook. Emily understood that building trust wasn't about rushing. It was about consistency, patience, and empathy. By mid-afternoon, something remarkable happened. Rex allowed Emily to brush lightly along his back, just a few strokes. His muscles tensed at first, but he didn't flinch or retreat. The low growl that had accompanied most physical contact was absent. Instead, he shifted slightly closer, as if testing the safety of the interaction. Emily whispered soothingly, "You're okay, Rex. You're safe." Each word was deliberate, chosen to reassure and calm. She had unlocked a tiny breakthrough, the first physical connection with a dog no one had dared approach. The neighborhood continued to watch, a mixture of awe and disbelief in every gaze. Children whispered excitedly from porches. Adults shook their heads, uncertain whether to admire or fear what they were witnessing. Emily, however, remained focused. She knew that Rex's aggression had been a shield, a defense built from neglect and fear. By allowing him to approach her at his own pace, she was dismantling that barrier, layer by layer. Each small success reinforced the bond forming between them. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across Oak Ridge, Emily decided to conclude the session. She withdrew her hand slowly, maintaining eye contact without breaking it. "I'll come back tomorrow," she promised softly. Rex watched her leave, ears pricked, tail flicking once. He did not bark. He did not lunge. He simply observed, a glimmer of trust in his gaze. For the first time in years, he had allowed a human, especially a child, to physically connect with him and return unharmed. That evening, Emily returned home, exhilarated and exhausted. Her parents met her at the door, worry etched across their faces. "Did it?" her father asked tentatively. Emily nodded, a bright smile on her face. "He let me touch him. He even let me brush along his back." Her mother's eyes widened. "He actually—" Emily nodded again, excitement bubbling in her chest. The breakthrough was real, tangible, and undeniable. Her courage had changed the dynamic entirely. Emily carefully recorded every detail in her notebook, from Rex's subtle body language to the exact steps she had taken. She noted the order in which he allowed contact, the areas he tolerated, and the gestures that made him flinch. Each observation was a lesson in patience, empathy, and communication. She realized that trust, once broken, could be rebuilt, but only slowly, carefully, and consistently. Each small victory was a milestone on a long road toward full connection. Across the street, Rex lay beneath the oak tree, muscles relaxed but alert. His eyes tracked Emily as she retreated down the sidewalk, tail flicking with a mix of curiosity and cautious interest. Something fundamental had shifted inside him. He had allowed himself to be vulnerable, to engage physically with a human being without aggression. The untouchable dog of Oak Ridge had begun to trust. It was a fragile bond, but a bond nonetheless, one that promised future growth and connection. That night, Emily lay in bed, notebook in hand, recounting every detail. She wrote, "Rex is cautious, but beginning to trust. Physical contact is possible if approached slowly. Patience and consistency are key. Today, he let me brush his back, an incredible milestone." She smiled, understanding that trust was a delicate, ongoing process. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she felt ready. She knew that this tiny breakthrough was the foundation of something far greater. In the quiet streets of Oak Ridge, a neighborhood once ruled by fear watched a story unfold that defied expectation. Rex, feared, aggressive, and untouchable, had allowed a 7-year-old girl to reach him in ways no adult had ever managed. Emily's courage, patience, and empathy were rewriting the narrative of a dog the community had long considered beyond help. And as night fell, Rex lay alert but calm, the first flicker of trust illuminating his wary eyes. The journey had begun. The summer air was thick with the scent of cut grass and the faint hint of barbecue smoke drifting from nearby backyards. Emily walked down Oak Ridge's familiar sidewalks with a quiet determination. Her notebook was tucked into her backpack, along with the treats she had carefully prepared. Today, however, she sensed this session would be different. The calm routine she and Rex had cultivated was about to face a true test, a challenge that would reveal whether their fragile trust could withstand the unpredictability of the real world. Rex lay in his yard beneath the shade of the oak tree, muscles relaxed but alert, his eyes tracking Emily's approach. Over the past weeks, he had grown accustomed to her presence. He allowed her to place treats on the ground, to speak softly, even to brush lightly along his back. But Emily knew that trust, especially with a dog like Rex, was delicate. One wrong move, one sudden noise, could undo everything. She approached slowly, speaking softly. "Hi, Rex. I'm here." "It's okay." For a moment, nothing happened. Rex sniffed the air, head tilted, ears flicking, tail still. He was attentive, watching her movements closely. Then, from the corner of the yard, a sudden rustling broke the peaceful rhythm. A stray dog had wandered into Oakridge, its fur matted, eyes alert, and posture tense. Rex immediately stiffened, muscles taut, a low growl emanating from deep in his chest. He lunged toward the edge of the fence, teeth bared, eyes locked on the intruder. Emily froze, her heart pounding. This was the moment she had anticipated, but feared, the ultimate test of everything they had worked on. The stray dog barked, circling the yard, sensing Rex's aggression. Most humans would have panicked, shouting or running, but Emily remained calm. She knelt slowly, voice low and steady. "Rex, it's okay. You don't have to bite. Stay with me?" Her words were gentle, filled with reassurance, but firm enough to signal authority. Rex growled, ears back, but hesitated. The instinct to defend his territory warred with the growing trust he had in Emily. He circled the stray, barking and snapping, then paused, glancing at her. Emily extended her hand slowly, palm down, maintaining eye contact, her voice soft but confident. "Rex, stay calm. I'm here. You can do this." She didn't shout, didn't move suddenly. She trusted that her presence could guide him. Seconds stretched like minutes. Rex's growl softened slightly, but his body remained tense. Emily stepped back a few inches, giving him space, and whispered, "You're safe. I'm here. You don't have to attack." To the casual observer, it might have seemed that nothing was happening. But Emily could feel the tension in the air, the subtle shift in Rex's posture, the flicker of restraint in his movements, the hesitation before he barked again. The stray dog barked, inching closer, but Rex, unusually, did not lunge. He stayed partially restrained, glancing repeatedly at Emily, seeking her guidance. Emily remained calm, her voice steady, hands relaxed, conveying trust and safety. Slowly, she offered a treat, tossing it gently toward Rex, not as a bribe, but as a signal. "Good boy, Rex. You can stay calm." Rex sniffed the air, muscles still tense, then paused. He inhaled deeply and for the first time, restrained his instinctive lunge. Neighbors peeked through curtains and doorways, astonished. He's not attacking," one whispered. A retired dog trainer, standing at the edge of the street, shook his head in disbelief. "Incredible. He's controlling himself because of her," he muttered. Emily remained focused, kneeling low, her gaze fixed on Rex. Her small presence, steady and unwavering, was the anchor preventing chaos. The stray dog eventually wandered away, sensing no victory to be had. Rex remained tense, alert, but calm. Emily exhaled quietly, a mixture of relief and pride flooding her chest. She gently placed a hand on Rex's back, and he flinched slightly, then relaxed, leaning into the contact for the first time in a high-stress situation. His growl had faded completely. The trust they had built over weeks had held firm in the face of real danger. This was no longer a test of treats or proximity. It was a test of composure, empathy, and courage. After the stray left, Emily spent the next hour calmly sitting near Rex, speaking softly, offering treats, and allowing him to regain a sense of security. She noted every reaction in her notebook. How he responded to sudden threats, how he listened to her guidance, how quickly he calmed when reassured. She realized that the bond they shared was stronger than mere training. It was built on trust, respect, and emotional understanding. Rex had chosen to respond to her guidance rather than his fear. The breakthrough had not gone unnoticed. Neighborhood children cautiously approached, peeking from behind fences and trees, amazed that the feared Rex had not attacked. Adults whispered to one another, many shaking their heads in awe. Emily's calm, unwavering courage had transformed a situation that could have ended in chaos into a demonstration of trust and control. Rex, the dog everyone considered untouchable, had responded to the gentle guidance of a 7-year-old girl. By the end of the afternoon, Rex had regained a sense of calm. Emily remained kneeling, softly speaking to him, hand resting lightly on his back. She had observed his reactions, guided him through fear, and reinforced trust under pressure. This was more than a milestone. It was proof that their bond could withstand real-world challenges. Emily's patience and bravery had helped Rex learn self-control, a skill he had never mastered before. That evening, Emily returned home, notebook in hand, documenting the day's events with precision. She wrote, "Rex faced a real threat today. He restrained his instinct to attack. He responded to my voice and presence instead of fear. This is a major breakthrough." She smiled, knowing that today's challenge had strengthened their connection in ways that simple treats or gentle brushing could not. Across the street, Rex lay beneath the oak tree, muscles relaxed but alert, eyes tracking the last glimpse of Emily as she walked home. He had faced a threat, exercised restraint, and chosen to trust. The untouchable German Shepherd, feared by the entire neighborhood, had demonstrated self-control guided by empathy and understanding rather than fear and aggression. It was a small but profound victory won that marked a turning point in their journey. Oakridge slept under a blanket of stars that night, unaware that a legendary dog had taken the first steps toward transformation. Rex, once aggressive and feared, had faced his instincts and chosen a new path. Emily, small but fearless, had guided him through the challenge. Trust, patience, and courage had triumphed over instinct and fear. And as she drifted to sleep, notebook beside her, Emily knew that tomorrow would bring new opportunities to deepen the bond that had begun to reshape both their lives and the entire neighborhood. The morning sun cast long golden rays over Oakridge, illuminating lawns, sprinklers, and the familiar sidewalk where Emily walked daily to see Rex. Today felt different. The air was charged with anticipation, a quiet tension that Emily could feel in her chest. Over the past weeks, she had built a fragile bridge of trust with Rex, the untouchable German Shepherd. He had allowed her to touch him, brush him, and even restrain his instincts under real-world pressure. But today, Emily wanted to take the next step, introducing Rex more fully to the neighborhood, demonstrating that he could coexist peacefully with others. She approached Rex's yard with measured steps, backpack slung lightly over her shoulders. Rex was already awake, lying beneath the oak tree, his eyes following her approach with keen attention. Emily knelt down, speaking softly, "Good morning, Rex. Are you ready to show them you can be calm today?" His tail twitched slightly in response, ears alert but relaxed. There was a new understanding between them, a silent dialogue that had formed over weeks of careful observation and patient interaction. Emily had planned this carefully. Today, she had invited her neighbor, Mrs. Whitaker, who had long been wary of Rex, to stand a safe distance away with a leash in hand. She wanted to demonstrate that Rex could respond calmly, even in the presence of another person he didn't fully know. The goal was not to push him too far, but to show him and everyone watching that trust was possible beyond their one-on-one interactions. As she approached the edge of the yard, Emily held out a treat in her hand, speaking softly. "Good boy. Rex, you can do this." Rex sniffed the treat, then glanced at Emily, his gaze flicking toward Mrs. Whitaker. He stiffened slightly, tail rigid, muscles coiled. Emily remained calm, slowly extending her hand toward him, whispering reassurances. "It's okay, Rex. She's not a threat. You're safe. Trust me." For a tense moment, the neighborhood seemed to hold its breath. Children peeked around corners, adults watched from porches and windows, all mesmerized by the unfolding scene. Rex's low growl rumbled through the yard, his instincts telling him to assert dominance, to protect his territory. But Emily's presence, calm and unwavering, acted as an anchor. She radiated patience and confidence, and slowly, Rex's body began to relax. Mrs. Whitaker stepped closer cautiously, holding a leash, her voice trembling slightly. "Hi, Rex. I'm just here to watch," she said softly. Rex lifted his head, ears twitching, eyes flicking between Emily and the neighbor. He growled again, low in warning, but did not lunge. Emily extended a hand toward him, palm open, and whispered, "You're safe, Rex. Stay calm." Slowly, miraculously, Rex allowed Mrs. Whitaker to toss a treat toward him. He sniffed it, then stepped back, watching her intently. Emily's soft voice reassured him, and he inched closer again, sniffing the air, then cautiously accepting another treat from the neighbor. The tension in the yard melted slightly. It was a small act, but monumental in significance. Rex had learned that people beyond Emily could be trusted, at least in small ways. Emily's heart raced with excitement. She knelt low, letting Rex approach her for reassurance when needed, whispering soft praise for each calm gesture he made. "Good boy, Rex. You're doing so well." His tail twitched, ears relaxed, and for the first time, he seemed comfortable with the presence of someone new in his yard. Emily's careful guidance and patience had translated into a tangible demonstration of trust. Over the next hour, the neighborhood watched in amazement as Rex slowly interacted with more people. He allowed children to toss treats under Emily's supervision, growled only briefly when startled, then calmed quickly when Emily reassured him. Neighbors who had once avoided Oak Ridge sidewalks now stepped cautiously closer, marveling at the transformation. The untouchable dog, once feared and aggressive, was learning to engage with his community under the guidance of a 7-year-old girl. Emily carefully documented every reaction in her notebook: body posture, ear and tail movements, and responses to new people. She noticed patterns emerging. Rex relaxed faster when approached slowly, remained calm when spoken to in soft, steady tones, and sought reassurance from Emily during moments of uncertainty. Each observation was a lesson in trust-building, patience, and the transformative power of empathy. By late afternoon, Rex had allowed multiple neighbors to toss treats under Emily's careful supervision. He had sniffed hands, accepted gentle petting from Emily, and even sat calmly near others, a stark contrast to the aggressive, untouchable dog he had once been. The community's perception of him was beginning to change. Where fear had once ruled, curiosity and admiration were now taking root. Mrs. Whitaker knelt at a safe distance, watching in awe. "I can't believe it," she whispered to Emily's mother. He's actually calm." Emily's parents exchanged glances, pride and relief mixing in their expressions. Their daughter had not only transformed Rex's behavior, but had also begun to shift the entire neighborhood's perception of the once feared dog. As the sun dipped lower, Emily decided to end the session. She knelt near Rex, whispering softly, "You did so well today. I'm proud of you." He nudged her hand gently with his nose, a gesture of trust and recognition. For the first time, the untouchable German Shepherd allowed himself to be vulnerable in front of multiple people, guided by the patience, courage, and empathy of a single little girl. That evening, Emily returned home, notebook in hand, documenting the extraordinary events of the day. She wrote, "Rex allowed multiple people to interact safely. He remained calm under supervision. Trust is growing beyond just me." Today was a huge milestone. She smiled, understanding that each small step was part of a larger journey, a journey that could transform Rex's life completely. Across the street, Rex lay beneath the oak tree, watching the last glimpses of Emily as she walked home. His body was relaxed, tail flicking occasionally, ears alert but not tense. Something fundamental had shifted. He had begun to trust the world beyond Emily. He had experienced calm, patience, and kindness in the presence of others. And he had responded not with aggression, but with cautious engagement. Oak Ridge, once a neighborhood defined by fear of Rex, now watched a story of transformation unfold. Children and adults alike had witnessed courage, patience, and empathy triumph over instinct and fear. Emily, small but fearless, had guided the untouchable German shepherd toward a new beginning. The bond between them had strengthened, and the neighborhood could see the possibilities that had once seemed impossible. That night, Emily lay in bed, notebook beside her, reflecting on the day. "Rex is learning to trust more than just me," she wrote. "He's beginning to see the world differently. Each small step matters. Tomorrow, we'll continue building trust." She smiled, exhausted but exhilarated, knowing that the journey was far from over, but the foundation was strong. In Oak Ridge, the streets were quiet under the stars, but the energy of transformation lingered in the air. The untouchable German shepherd had begun to show glimpses of the dog he could be, trusting, calm, and connected. And Emily, courageous, patient, and compassionate, had proven that even the most feared and aggressive beings could change, one small act of kindness at a time. The sun rose over Oak Ridge, casting long, warm beams across the quiet streets. Birds chirped cheerfully, and the familiar hum of suburban life returned as sprinklers hissed across lawns. Today was different, though. Emily's heart raced with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. For weeks, she had worked tirelessly to build trust with Rex, the untouchable German shepherd who had once been feared by the entire neighborhood. Today, she felt ready for the culmination of their journey, a demonstration of trust, calm, and connection in front of everyone who had once been afraid. Emily approached Rex's yard, backpack slung lightly over her shoulders, heart beating in rhythm with the summer air. Rex was already alert, standing beneath the oak tree that had become his sanctuary. His coat gleamed in the sunlight, ears perked, and tail held high but relaxed. The tense, rigid posture he had once carried was gone. Emily knelt carefully on the sidewalk, speaking softly. "Good morning, Rex. Are you ready to show them who you really are?" Rex's eyes flicked toward the street, where neighbors had begun to gather cautiously at a safe distance. Children peeked from behind fences, whispering excitedly, and adults watched with anticipation, unsure what they were about to witness. Emily extended a hand slowly, palm up, speaking gently. "It's okay, Rex. You're safe." "You're ready." The dog sniffed the air, muscles relaxed, and slowly he stepped forward, closer than he had ever dared with so many people nearby. The neighborhood held its collective breath. Rex, once considered untouchable and aggressive, now stood near Emily calmly. She whispered reassuringly, "Good boy, Rex. You're doing so well." He leaned into her hand slightly, accepting gentle strokes along his back. For the first time, he allowed himself to be vulnerable in front of multiple people, showing a trust that had once seemed impossible. The murmurs of astonishment spread through the crowd. Children approached cautiously under Emily's careful supervision, tossing small treats toward Rex. He sniffed, then took them gently, eyes flicking between Emily and the children. There were no growls, no aggressive postures, only cautious engagement. Neighbors who had long avoided Oak Ridge sidewalks now stepped closer, amazed at the transformation. Emily's small, patient presence had completely reshaped the community's perception of Rex, the dog that had once been feared above. All else was now calm, approachable, and learning to trust beyond his relationship with Emily. Over the next hour, Emily guided Rex through gentle interactions. He allowed the children to sit nearby while she offered reassurance, let adults toss treats and speak softly, and responded consistently to her calm voice. Each gesture, each subtle acknowledgement, strengthened the fragile bridge of trust. Emily took careful notes in her notebook, documenting behaviors, responses, and milestones, knowing that every detail mattered. She understood that Rex's journey was not about control, but connection. By midday, something extraordinary happened. Rex, fully relaxed, trotted to Emily's side without hesitation, nudging her hand for guidance. She laughed softly, whispering, "Good boy, Rex. You've come so far." The crowd of neighbors erupted quietly into applause, smiles spreading across faces that had once carried fear. The untouchable German Shepherd had become a living testament to the power of patience, empathy, and courage. Mrs. Whitaker stepped forward cautiously, holding a leash. "May I?" she asked softly. Emily nodded, keeping her hand on Rex's back. With gentle guidance, Rex allowed Mrs. Whitaker to attach the leash. He did not resist. He did not flinch. For the first time, someone outside of Emily's immediate care could interact with him safely. The neighborhood erupted in whispers of awe. Emily's careful planning, patience, and empathy had not only transformed Rex, but had shifted the entire community's perception of what was possible. Rex's transformation continued as Emily led him around the yard, guiding him through calm, controlled interactions. He sniffed new faces, accepted gentle pets under supervision, and responded to her soft commands with focus and attention. Where fear had once ruled, trust now thrived. The dog who had been labeled untouchable was now a symbol of hope, demonstrating that even the most aggressive and fearful beings could change when met with patience, consistency, and care. By late afternoon, Emily allowed Rex to move freely among the gathered neighbors. Children cautiously petted him under her watchful eye. Adults offered gentle pats, and the once frightened crowd marveled at the transformation. Rex wagged his tail lightly, ears relaxed, eyes bright. He had embraced the world beyond Emily, learning that not all humans pose threats. The aggressive, untouchable dog had become a trusted companion, his fear replaced by cautious curiosity and engagement. Emily knelt beside him, whispering softly, "You did it, Rex. You're amazing." He nudged her hand gently, eyes bright with recognition and trust. It was a bond forged over weeks of patience, observation, and courage. Emily had not only transformed Rex's life, but had also reshaped the community's understanding of fear, aggression, and the power of empathy. Oak Ridge would never see Rex the same way again. Neighbors approached, offering quiet congratulations. Children hugged Emily, praising her bravery. Adults shook their heads in amazement. "I never thought I'd see the day," one neighbor murmured. He's a different dog." Emily smiled softly, watching Rex interact peacefully with the neighborhood. It wasn't magic. It was patience, understanding, and the unwavering courage of a little girl who refused to give up. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across Oak Ridge, Emily led Rex back to his yard. She knelt beside him one last time for the day, brushing his back gently, whispering words of praise. He leaned into her touch, muscles relaxed, tail wagging lightly. The journey that had begun with cautious observation, tentative gestures, and careful treats had reached a remarkable conclusion. Rex was no longer untouchable. He had learned trust, calm, and connection, and Emily had guided him every step of the way. That night, Emily returned home, exhausted but exhilarated. Her parents met her at the door, eyes wide with pride. He's really changed," her father whispered. Emily nodded, smiling. "He's amazing. And it's not just me. It's patience, understanding, and trust." Her mother hugged her tightly. "You did something incredible, Emily. You changed a life." Emily's eyes sparkled, reflecting both pride and humility. She had accomplished something extraordinary, not through force or dominance, but through empathy, courage, and unwavering patience. Across the street, Rex lay beneath the oak tree, watching the last glimpses of Emily as she walked home. His eyes were calm, bright, and alert. The aggressive, untouchable German shepherd had transformed completely. Fear no longer defined him. Trust now shaped his interactions. He had learned to engage safely with the world, responding to patience and understanding rather than instinct and aggression. The neighborhood had witnessed a miracle, the transformation of a dog once feared above all into a trusted companion. Emily lay in bed that night, notebook in hand, reflecting on the journey. She wrote, "Rex is calm, trusting, and engaged. He interacts safely with others. Patience, empathy, and consistency have transformed his life. Trust has conquered fear. Today marks the completion of our journey, but the bond we've built will last forever." She smiled, knowing that Rex's story was not just about a dog, it was about courage, compassion, and the extraordinary power of a little girl who refused to give up. Oak Ridge, once ruled by fear of Rex, now celebrated him as a symbol of hope and transformation. The untouchable German shepherd, once aggressive and feared, had learned to trust, to engage, and to love under the guidance of Emily's unwavering courage. And for Emily, the journey had not only changed Rex, it had shown her the power of patience, empathy, and the incredible impact one determined, compassionate individual can have on the world around them.